What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Kilo Loco, and today we're going to be building out an authentication flow using Jetpack Compose in our Android app. Now, we're going to be building out the sign up, the verification, and the login screens, which will then lead into a session screen. So we'll be dealing with navigation, state management, and then we'll also be setting up a backend, which will actually authenticate our user, and that's going to be using AWS Amplify, the authentication category, which actually uses Amazon Cognito under the hood. Now, if you take a look over at our app, it's really simple to log in, and we'll also have a sign up screen and a verification screen, which you can see right here. But it's very simple to sign in, and we just do our username, and then we enter in our password, and mine, it may or may not be password one, I don't know. And then we hit log in, and then if that authenticates our user, then we will actually see our session screen. So that's coming up. All right, so the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start by creating the UI. We're going to start creating each of the screens. So let's go ahead and create a new file called screens. In the screens file, we're just going to create each of the composables that are going to represent each of the screens. Let's start by creating a session screen. So this is going to be our session screen. As you can see here, it has the column, which is going to have some vertical and horizontal arrangement and alignment, and it's going to just try to make it look a little bit nicer, whatever. And what we're really focusing on is just making sure that we have something that lets us know that we have logged in, because this is going to be our end result, our session screen. And then we have a button that we can click, and this is going to essentially be the sign out button that we're going to implement later. Now, to see this screen in action, let's just go over to main activity real quick, and let's add that in. And we replace the text with the session screen and run it. All right, our app runs. We can see that we have our session screen, and this is where we want to get to after we go through the entire authentication flow. Let's head back over to screens.kt. Now, whenever I do an authentication flow, I like to do the sign up screen first because it has the most fields, and then we can just simply copy and paste that screen and then remove fields after the fact. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. All right, so as you can see, we have our next composable, which is the sign up screen. We're going to have a column, which is going to hold each of the different text fields and then also the buttons that are associated with signing up. So we're going to add some vertical arrangement, making sure we have space in between each of the text fields and the buttons. We have horizontal alignment, make sure everything is in the center. Then we have 3 text fields, the first being username, the next being email, and then the last one being password. You can see that we're also doing some things with the visual transformation and keyboard options specifically for that password field. And then we have a button, which is not going to do anything just yet. We don't have any functionality yet, but this is going to be our sign up button. And then we have another button, which is going to give us the option to change from a sign up screen to a login screen. And let's go ahead and take a look at that by adding that to the main activity real quick. All right, so we have sign up screen, and then we're going to run it. All right, and as you can see, 3 text fields and then 2 buttons. So now what we want to do is we want to essentially take this same UI and then just modify it a little bit to make our login screen. So the only difference between our sign up and our login screen for this particular UI is that we're not going to need an email field, and we need to update some of the text. So let's go back over to screens.kt, and let's go ahead and add in our login screen. All right, and here we go. So we have our login screen composable, and we're doing the same thing with vertical and horizontal alignment. Only difference here is that we're only having 2 text fields, which is username and password, doing the same things for the password field, but we just have these buttons updated with the correct text. So now we have a login, and we have the switch to the sign up screen, right? So instead of logging in, we need to sign up and offer that as an option to our users. The last screen that we're going to need to implement is going to be the verification screen. So we're going to be sending off a code to an email address, and then we need to verify that. So let's go ahead and add in that screen as well. And as you can see, the verification code screen is very much like the other 2 screens, except now it only has a single text field, and the button at the bottom is verify, and there is no option to switch between sign up and login. Next, let's move on to the navigation aspect of our app. So we're going to need to open up our build.gradle file, and we need to scroll all the way down and add a new implementation for the Compose navigation. So we're going to add that in, and we're going to sync our changes now. Now that we have the navigation compose package implemented into our project, we can actually start working with navigation. So we're going to start off by creating a view model, which is going to help us navigate throughout the app. So as you can see here in the auth view model.kt file, we have this new class which implements view model, and it has this this callback right here, which is called navigate to, and it's going to pass a string in the callback. So what we're going to do is we're going to be using navigate to as a callback to send which route we think the UI should be navigating to during each of the calls. So let's go ahead and add in each of the different possible calls that we're going to be making from our UI. So as you can see here, I added in a couple of different calls. We have the show sign up, which is going to be no logic involved. It's just simply going to navigate to the sign up screen. The show login, which is going to do essentially the same thing, but to log in. And then we have 4 other calls. Now these are going to actually have logic once we implement our backend properly with Amplify, and we're going to call the navigate to after we make those authentication calls to our backend. But we have sign up, verify code, login, log out, and each of these are going to navigate to their respective routes based off of what's being passed in as a string. With our view model in place, let's head over to the main activity.kt file, and we are going to create an instance of our view model. So we create our view model by doing view model by view models, pass in the type of view model we're going to be working with, auth view model in this case. Then we need to create our app navigator right here. So as you can see, now we have our app navigator. It's going to be responsible for creating the nav controller, and we're going to actually be accessing our view model, which we created up here. And we're going to implement the navigate to callback. We're going to assign it this block of code right here, which is going to take in the nav controller. It's going to navigate to the route that's passed to it through the view model.navigate to callback. And then we're going to set up our nav host. Now the nav host needs to take in our nav controller. We set the start destination as login, and then we create a composable for each of the routes that are available in this navigation stack. So we have login, and that's going to show the login screen, sign up screen, verify, verification code screen, and then session screen. As you can see, we need to also update the method name for each of our screens. So let's go back over here in screens.kt and make sure that they are accepting the view model as a parameter. All right, so we're going to start with the session screen. We're going to add a view model as a parameter to the method name. And then we are also going to update our button click functionality right here. And we are going to set it to view model log out. Now, every time we hit the log out button, we will actually be calling the log out functionality from our view model. Now we're going to essentially do the same thing with the sign up screen. So for the sign up screen, let's go ahead and add a view model as a parameter. And then down at the button, what we're going to do on the sign up button is we're going to implement the sign up functionality from our view model when we click the sign up button. And then also we're going to make sure that we're calling the show login functionality from the already have an account login button. We're going to essentially rinse and repeat for the login screen. So view model as a parameter. For the button, the login button, we're going to implement the view model login functionality. And then for the don't have an account sign up button, we're going to implement the view model show sign up functionality. For the verification code screen, same exact thing. View model as a parameter, update the button functionality to do view model verify code. With all this in place, we can head back over to the main activity. We should no longer have any errors, but if we go ahead and change this to app navigator, we can now navigate through the entirety of our screens. All right, here it goes. It boots up. We're starting off with login because that's what the app navigator tells it to do. We should only have the functionality to navigate between screens. So when I click sign up, it shows the sign up screen. When I click log in, it goes back, and we're going to essentially go through the sign up flow. So we hit sign up once we get that correct callback. Then we're going to show the verify screen. If that works out, then we're going to go to the login screen, and then the user will actually be able to log in. And then we have gone to the session page, and then we'll be able to log out once we get there. Next, what we have to do is we have to manage the state, because as you might notice, the text fields will not take in any input. So we need to manage that and update that. And we're going to do that with separate objects for each screen. Let's start by creating a UI states file. What we're going to do in the UI states file is we're going to have objects that are going to represent the state of each of the screens where the user can actually have some type of input. That's going to include the sign up screen, the verification code screen, and the login screen. So let's go ahead and add those in right now. And as you can see, we have those 3 objects. Once again, starting off with the sign up state, because it's going to take in the most input, which is going to be username, email, and password. Login state is going to be a subset of that. And then verification code is going to require the username, and it's going to have a code as well. So next, what we need to do is we need to create a function in our view model that's going to allow us to manipulate each of these objects since they are data classes. So head back over to our auth view model, and in the auth view model, just under the navigate to callback variable, I'm going to add in 3 new variables. They are going to represent instances of each of the states, and they are going to be mutable states. So we have the login state, which is going to be a mutable state of login state, sign up state, and verification code state. And all of these are only going to be settable inside of this class. So we're going to have a private set. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to implement a function that we can call that will actually modify these states since they are only private set. So let's go ahead and create a function that's going to be called update sign up state. So this will take in our username, an email, and a password. Now these are nullable strings because we want to be able to pass in a value when the user is updating the username field, but we don't necessarily want to make any changes to the email or the password when we're updating that username field. So we want to be able to make updates to a single field and a single property at a time without modifying the other ones. So you'll notice that we're going to do the username, and it's going to be username.let, right? And if we do get a value for username, and this is only going to happen when they're typing in their username on the sign up screen, then what we'll do is we're going to update the sign up state value to a copy of itself, but only with a change to the username property. So it's going to be a copy of itself with the updated change, and that's why we're setting it. Now remember, I did say that we are going to need the username for the verification code screen. Now you can do this a lot of different ways. It just depends on how you want to do it. But in this very simple flow, what we're going to do is, as we're updating the sign up screen state, we're also going to update the verification code state as well to have that same username value. And you see that being updated here as well. Next, we're going to, whenever the user is entering in a value on the email field, we'll update that. We'll make a copy just as before, update the email. Same thing goes with the password. Now let's go ahead and do the same thing for the login and the verification code screens. So as you can see, now we have this update login state, very similar method. It's going to have a username and password because that's all it takes in. And it's much simpler because we're not going to need to update the verification state, the verification code state, right? So username gets updated. We just make a copy of the login state and set it to a copy with the updated username value. Same thing goes for the password, updated username or updated password value being set to that login state. And then once again, same thing for the verification code state. Now that we have a way to update our state, what we need to do is we need to reflect that state in our screens. So we're going to head over to screens.kt, and then we're going to go all the way to the top, and we're going to start with the sign up screen, and we need to create an instance of our state and start using that in our text fields. So now we have this state property, which is going to be represented by the viewModel.signup_state, and we can implement that into each of the text fields. So for the first text field, which is the username, we can update that to take in the state.username for its value. That's going to be representing what is being shown in the text field. And then whenever the value changes, we're just simply going to call viewModel.updateSignUpState, and we want to make sure that we specify which property we're updating or which parameter we're passing a value to, and it's username for this one. And we do this, we rinse and repeat for each of the following text fields. So for email, we're going to be representing that by the email, and then we're going to make sure that we pass in the new value change for that email parameter. And then the same thing goes for password. Value is represented by password, and then update state, and then it's going to be the password this time. Now we just need to simply rinse and repeat for login. All right, so we do the same thing for login screen. We create the state, we pass it into the text fields, username, right? And we're going to make sure that we use the correct function name, update login state, not update sign up state this time. And then the same thing for the password, update login state for the password. Same thing as before. Let's do the same thing for verification code screen. Lots of repetitive tasks for authentication, but we got to do it. All right, so verification code, once again, create the state, then pass it into the text field so that we can actually have some state for the text field. If we run this now, we'll actually be able to start typing it in, but we're not doing anything with that state change, but at least we'll be able to see that we can actually utilize having data in each of these fields. The last piece of the puzzle is to start working with Amplify and create our backend. So we're going to start off by using Amplify init, and I already have Amplify CLI installed on my machine. And now it's just going to prompt me to run through a couple of different questions. I'm going to enter in the default by hitting enter. And then also I'm going to use the default configuration. If you want to make any changes that you know of, then you can go ahead and do that. But I'm just going to hit enter, and that's going to say, yes, I want the default configuration. And then we're going to work with the AWS profile, and I'm going to just select my default. From here, it's going to actually create an Amplify project locally and in the backend. Now that we've successfully created an Amplify project, what we want to do is we want to actually add in the authentication category by running Amplify add auth. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use all the default settings. So I could just hit enter for each of these configurations. So enter on default configuration, username, no, I'm done. And then now we've created an Amplify auth configuration locally. The only next thing to do is to actually push that configuration to our backend. And we do that by running Amplify push. So it's going to show us a status of any changes that we've made. And as you can see, we have the category auth being created right here. And we do want to continue. So we're going to hit enter, and that's going to say yes. And we want to continue. It's now going to proceed to push our local Amplify configuration to the backend, spin up Amazon Cognito user pools for our app, and it's going to take all that information and make it recognizable to our app. Our Amplify project has successfully been pushed to the back end. We have our Amazon Cognito authentication flow already and set up in the back end. Now we just need to add that to the front end. We're going to start by heading back over to our build.gradle file, the app one, and we're going to add in a new implementation. That's going to be the Amplify framework, the AWS Auth Cognito package. And let's go ahead and sync that now. Now we can start coding using the Amplify package. So let's create a new file that's going to be responsible for holding all of our Amplify implementation. In our new Amplify service.kt file, we're going to create a new interface called Amplify service. And this interface is going to be responsible for handling each of the 5 different things that we need to do when we're using Amplify in our app as our backend to authenticate a user. First, we need to configure Amplify before we use it. We're going to have a sign up function that's going to be taking in a sign up state, verification code, take in a specific state, login, state, log out, and then all we're going to have is going to be a completion block for each of those functionality methods. So let's start by creating an implementation, and we're going to start from the top by using the configure Amplify. So as you can see, we have this new Amplify service implementation, and we're going to start off by doing configure Amplify. Like I said, we need to call configure on Amplify before we start using any of the resources, or else it's going to cause a crash to our app. So for this configure Amplify, we're going to need a context. We'll be passing that in from our main activity in a little bit. Then we need to specify which plugin we're working with. We're going to be using the Cognito Auth plugin. And then lastly, we call configure. We should get something logged to logcat regardless of the output. So it should either be a configured Amplify successfully log or some type of failure. Then we just need to add each of the different methods so that we can get rid of this red squiggly error. We're going to start by adding in the sign up method. Once again, this will take in a sign up state, and then once we get a success, we'll call on complete. So first, in order to sign up using Amplify, we need to create our sign up options with a builder. We need to specify which user attributes we're going to be using. In this case, we're going to be using email. We'll build that, and then we'll pass it into our amplify.auth.signup. Now you'll notice that there's going to be this pattern when we use Amplify. Very easy to remember. Amplify dot the category that we're using, authentication in this case, so it'll be auth, and then we're going to do something. We're going to call sign up. This is going to take in the username and password. We're going to pass in the options as well. And then if we get a successful callback, then we'll call on complete. If we get an error, then we'll just log that error. All right, next, let's go ahead and do the same thing with the verification code right here. And as you can see, we have this verify code method implemented, Amplify auth. We're going to confirm the sign up. It's going to take in the username. Remember, we're updating that when we're doing the sign up screen. And then the code, which is done in the verification code screen. Completion block, we'll just call on complete. Error block, we're just going to do, we're going to log the errors today. Login method is going to be very similar, very straightforward. Amplify auth, login or sign in. We're going to be working with login state this time. Username, password, on complete. And then our final method, which is also the easiest one to implement, is going to be the logout method. This is just going to simply call on complete, amplify auth, sign out, and then on successfully on complete. From here, we need to head back over to the auth view model and create an instance of our Amplify service. And then we need to handle each of the different methods that we can call through an Amplify service. So we'll start at the end of these state updates, and we'll just start by doing the first one that we're going to need to use, which is the configure amplify method. So as you can see here, very simple. We don't want to give access outside of our view model to the Amplify service. So we're simply going to call it from here, and we're going to do amplify service.configure amplify and pass in a context is going to be essentially doing the same thing for this method. We're going to go ahead and skip the show sign up and show login because those don't need any functionality, but we start with the sign up method, and then we replace that with our amplify service.sign up. We need to pass in the sign up state to this method, remember, and then it has an on complete callback. And in that on complete callback, we just want to make sure that we're doing everything that is UI related on the main thread. So what we'll do is we'll make sure that we're going to call view model scope, and then we're going to launch and make sure that we do the dispatchers.main so that we are on the main thread. Then we'll call navigate to verify. So we'll go through the functionality in our Amplify service. Once we get a success, we will actually go to the next screen. From here, we're going to pretty much just be doing the same thing in each of these methods. We'll do verification, verify code. Once again, Amplify service, we're going to do the verify code. We're going to pass in verification code state, and then call the navigate after we're on the main thread. Login, same exact thing. Amplify service.login, login state, main thread, navigate to session after we log in. Last one, log out, and we're going to do amplify service.logout on complete, main thread, navigate to login. With all the functionality ready and done, all we have to do is head back over to our main activity and make sure that we're calling configure amplify before we actually try to use any of Amplify's methods. And it's as simple as doing view model.configure amplify and then passing in this for the context. We should be all set and ready to go. Let's see if our app works. All right, so we have our app pulled up right here. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we reinstall the app, because sometimes if you try to do all of this without actually reinstalling the app, things won't work as expected. So make sure you reinstall the app. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I sign up because I don't have an account in our Amazon Cognito backend yet. So let's go ahead and sign up. I'll enter in my information. All right, so I have all my information entered, and I'm going to actually be using a real email because we will need that for our verification code. Let's go ahead and sign up. And as we can see, we're pushed to the verification code screen, which means that we got a success. Now we enter in the verification code from our email. All right, I entered in my verification code that I got from my email. Now we're pushed to the login screen. Looks like everything's working so far. Enter in my information again. All right, information is entered. And if we hit login and we see the session screen, then we might know what we're doing. We hit login, it actually logged us in. It looks like we know what we're doing. So let's go ahead and log out. Does that work too? Oh, okay. And then we can obviously go through, we can update the app to make sure that we're erasing the state as soon as we log in. But if I go ahead and stop the app now, and then I rebuild it, run it again, we should be able to log in with our credentials. All right, I re-entered my credentials and do login, and we've successfully logged in. So yes, we do actually know what we're doing. Now, the last thing that I want to show you before we wrap this up is that you can actually see which users have signed up in Amazon Cognito in your backend. So open up the terminal and enter in Amplify console. We're going to choose AWS console for our option, and this will open up your browser. Now you'll have to be signed into AWS for it to open up like this, but once you do get here, you'll be able to go to the Authentication tab, and you'll actually be able to click this link, View Incognito, and this will actually show you your Cognito backend. You could look at your users and groups, and as we can see right here with the user that I just signed up with, Kilo Loco, our account status is confirmed, and we have our email verified, and the information, so on and so forth. So that's just a quick update of how you can see some of the information about your users that are signing up. So that's going to do it for today. I hope that you learned something new. Hope you're enjoying AWS Amplify. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. If you have any requests for any videos, anything following up on the authentication flow, whether that be forgot password, reset password, auto sign in, make sure you leave them in the comments down below, or you can actually leave an issue on the repo, my content repo, which I'll leave a link in the bio as well, or a link in the description as well. So thanks again for your time. Go out there and keep coding passionately.